Hello, everyone. How are you? Is everybody awake? Okay, well, first of all, thank you for making time for me today. I really appreciate that. I am super excited to be speaking to you guys, and I've had a career of connecting creatives. I have a soft spot for introverts. How many of you guys think you might be an introvert? Just a few. And I also happy to say I had started my own business a couple years ago where I had the opportunity to create what I wanted so that I incorporate everything from coaching to recruiting to immersive trips, you name it, I do it. I spent my entire career working in higher education and connecting creatives and developing partnerships with employers. And what was great about that is that I understand what employers want. I got to hear firsthand from employers what they love and what drives them crazy, or what's the best way to reach them, and how to make an impact. So often, how many people here have applied for a job, for instance, and never heard back? Okay, how horrible is that? You do that and you spend 2 hours, and if you apply for 5 jobs, then you've spent 10 hours and never heard back. So I really try to help demystify how you can break through that. And one of the things I really want to focus on today is not only networking and outreach, but follow-up, because what I noticed is so many of us will go out and make these connections, but we don't follow up all the time. I also, in my career, so right now I left higher education 2.5 years ago with the focus of saying, oh, I'm going to be a recruiter, that's it. And it was great, but I missed coaching, and I missed having the more holistic experience. So I started adding some things. So then I started doing a little coaching, and then I had a couple universities reach out and say, hey, can you help us implement some programs to help our kids get jobs? So I started doing a little bit of that. And then a couple years ago, me and another partner decided we were going to do these immersive trips, and we started with a trip that we put together the way we wanted. As you know, when you work for different companies, you have to do it the way they want. And luckily, I had great training because everybody I worked for did things really well. So since then, and since some of the people I saw in my last trip, and I see here that went with me, I also am an artist who I love sculpting, and I love ceramics, and I love people. So I started teaching a class also. So I'm doing that on the side just because of my passion. So let's talk about what is networking. So first of all, I'm always curious, what do you guys, when you think about networking, how many of you think of networking is going somewhere in public, going to a professional organization, or going to something like this, or going to a conference? Show of hands. Okay. How many people think LinkedIn is a way of networking? How about Instagram? Okay. All of it. All of them are networking tools. What is awesome is that when I started my career your age, it was a little different. We didn't have LinkedIn, and we didn't have Facebook, and we didn't have Instagram or X or Snapchat or Discord or all of the different things that continue to pop up. And it was all in person. What is so nice is now that we have the combination of in-person, digital, follow-up, and everything in between. So some of the things that we do are networking that we don't always think about. So for instance, I went to go get coffee this morning. When I went and got coffee, I sat next to somebody. That somebody was there in business. He was in town doing business, and turns out he was like, oh, we're looking for a recruiter. And can I get your card? And what exactly, it wasn't a fit. I didn't recruit for the kind of things he was looking for. I mean, he wants somebody who does something in finance, and it's not my wheelhouse. I'm only creative. But either way, everywhere is an opportunity to network. And so often we don't take advantage of it. So sometimes you'll go to a family's company party, or you'll go to, the schools, what you're doing today. Everywhere you go, one of the things I urge people to do is to look up and stop looking at your phone, because caught you. Not right this second, but anyways, the thing is, because when you're looking at your phone, you're missing the opportunity to meet strangers. And I know that goes against everything our parents taught us, is not to talk to strangers. But the reality is some of these strangers might be your next job opportunity, might be next freelance, it might be your next contract. So when you're going places, push yourself. One of the things I implemented a few years ago was I started saying, I want every year for me to do something that makes me feel uncomfortable. And that sounds like it's opposite of what you want to do. Most of us are like, let's go on vacation, let's hang out, let's relax. But I don't grow if I'm not doing something that's uncomfortable. So one of the things you guys want to do, I was talking to someone last night too, a student saying, oh, my teacher is giving me a hard time, and my teacher is, nitpicking at my work and finding fault. Well, the great thing about that is that the teacher likes you enough to tell you about your work. When the teacher stops telling you, then that means they may not feel your potential is as great. So when you're getting feedback from that teacher, that's another way of saying, I've got a relationship with this guy or a girl. They're gonna remember me. So later on, when I've graduated and I need a reference and I wanna go back to that teacher, you know what that teacher's gonna know? That you worked your butt off and that you took that advice. So you can't take that stuff, personal. So basically, when it comes to networking, it's in person, it's digital, and then it's follow-up. So today, you're gonna meet me and other employers here, and often people will meet with someone, have a great connection, connect on LinkedIn, and then not do anything else. And that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make, is if you really want to make these connections and you really want to start reaching people and have it more than just a conversation you had today. Because even if you went up to an employer and they didn't hire you, that's okay. I can tell you about a person I worked with. It was this young man wanted nothing more to work with this company called Alliance Entertainment, which was a music company. He was a graphic designer. They did all these beautiful posters, and they were all very colorful, and they were all very edgy. That's the only place he ever wanted to work. So what did he do? He applied for a job when they came to the career fair. He didn't get the job. After he didn't get the job, I said, reach back out. What do you have to lose? Let him know. Thank you for interviewing me. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this. And I want to let you know if anything changes, I would still be very much interested in working with you. So he did that. Crickets, heard nothing. A few weeks later, he showed me some new work. I said, share it with this person. This person knows you really want to work with them. And the work that you created is probably going to be very similar to the work that they're looking for. So he did, and he kept on. And I'm telling you, for a year, about once a month, sometimes more, he would reach out with something that was not super, oh, I need you to do this right now. It was more of, hey guys, I just created this new project. Oh, I just noticed you posted a new job. I really love it. So fast forward, the company decided they were going to give him a shot. So they called him. His phone had been disconnected. So he contacted me, the employer, and said, look, I don't have time to chase the person down, but I want to give this person a shot. And he did. I was able to find him. The only reason he got that job is because he persisted. He didn't give up. Even though he was rejected the day he applied, that wasn't the end for him. He continued and did other work on the side. So persistence is key. So how do you guys prepare? So I'm curious, for today's activities, how many people here have a business card? Okay. How many have a resume? Great. How many have their portfolio online? Awesome. Okay. And how many people have a LinkedIn page that is up to date? Great. So you guys are already there. For those of you who didn't raise your hand, you might want to consider doing some of those things. You want to make sure you have your LinkedIn page is right now, I think, the most prominent page for recruiters to find people. I think Instagram is a great one as well, but it is more towards visual arts. But we had a lot of employers recently said, oh, when I'm looking for a certain type of style, I look on Instagram. And they literally will scroll people's artwork. So make sure when you have these different social medias up to date that they have good work. They're not too crazy. You don't have too many things that aren't relevant. And I'm always a believer in keeping things out of anything from no politics, no religion, no medicine that you take, no any of these things that can make them judge you. And I always hear the counter, well, I don't want to work for somebody who believes in this, or I don't want to work for somebody who believes in that. Well, at this point, when you say things like that, you're probably cutting half the population out. So it's okay just to keep that to yourself. What happens outside of work, you can talk whatever you want to whoever you want. But when it comes to social media, when you're looking for opportunities and interviews, you want to really keep certain key things out of there. So when we're preparing, I always think it's important to research. Not only research, oh, this is a cool company, I like them. Who's coming? What's the person coming? What is their background? Do I have anything in common with this person? Does anyone I know this person? And if it's an interview, know everything you can about the company. People a lot of times will look them up but not look deep. I like using their press page. Their press page will mention things like, oh, we just purchased this new building. Okay, well, what do you guys think happens when somebody's purchasing a new building? They gotta fill it. They gotta hire people. So that means there's someone to keep on your radar. You might want to follow them on LinkedIn because you see things are happening. Other side of that, oh, we just downsized and we just laid off. Well, then rather than you spend 3 hours on an application for a company that says, oh, we keep our applications open, but they're downsizing, you may want to focus on someone else so that way you're not wasting your time, because I think that's the most frustrating part when you're looking for a job and you're wasting your time. So research and do a deep dive and know who they are. So that's for interviews. But if you go to a conference, some of these conferences are set up. I went to one called IDSA. IDSA, they have an app where you can say, I want to meet with you directly, and you can schedule it with the members. And I always go from top down. And instead of bottom up, I go for the president, the VP, anyone who's high level, for a few reasons. One, they usually know what's happening at those companies. And two, even if they're not the right person, they're going to refer me to somebody, and that person's going to listen a little bit better because it came from the VP or it came from the president. So I always do the research, and I try to do direct outreach. Other conferences will give you, Annecy, for instance, when we went to that conference, they give you a list of all the employers who are willing to share the email addresses, which is about 70% of them. And you can email them directly, which is what some people did. They reached out to them, they scheduled meetings, and a lot of times people actually are a little more receptive at places at conferences because it shows them that you're going above and beyond and you're doing that extra work. So reach out, don't wait until you get there, do it before you get there. I had a couple people here reached out to me before I came, so kudos for you guys. I really appreciate that because it shows that you were checking things out and finding out what's going on, and you're doing that deep research. So that's one thing I would definitely do. Then think about, what are you sharing? So how many times have I looked at a portfolio and someone's like, oh, I hate that project, I don't know why I left it in there. Okay, think about that. If you're hiring somebody and somebody says that, what's your response? Okay, well, if you don't like it, how are you going to expect me to like it? So think about what you're sharing and make sure whatever it is, that it's something you're proud of. And often I hear from employers, like, I'll have somebody who has 50 things in their online portfolio and I can never get through it. And they will put everything from the time they started till the time they ended. I think it's better to have really just great quality of a few things as opposed to everything. And then if that company says, oh, we work on these, do you have anything like that? Oh yeah, let me pull it out. But make sure you know what you're going to share. Are you going to give them a leave behind? Are you going to have a business card for them? Are you going to, whatever it is, feel confident about what you're sharing, and make sure that when you're talking about it, that you're not talking bad about your own work. How many people have said to themselves, oh gosh, I hate this project? Show of hands. Right. Okay, I have too. So let me just clarify. As an artist, I used to create a 3D project and then I would hate it at the end sometimes and I would smash it. And then I was like, why? And my family's like, stop smashing it. Maybe you should walk away for a little while and come back and maybe you'll like it a little bit better. So I did, and that kind of worked. So we all do it, but when you're doing it as your personal stuff is one thing, but when you're trying to get a job, you need to convince this person that you are the one they need to hire. So you never want to say anything that isn't positive. The other thing is, I always believe that you may know someone, and your teachers may know someone, and your career services people may know someone. Ask. So if you're going to a conference and one of the speakers there is someone you really want to meet, ask, do you know this person? Is there a way you could connect me with them ahead of time? If you've already done the outreach and it doesn't work, then ask, don't wait. So these are some of the things I always like to do. When I go to conferences, I mean, if I scheduled 10 meetings, I've probably reached out to a couple hundred people and had to follow up a lot. So it's never simple. You have to really work for it. So why does networking matter? So this particular picture was the owner of Titmouse. And we, just to give you a little story, when we went to Annecy last year, we all wanted to get into this party because, anybody here in animation? Anybody here know who Titmouse is? Right, so everybody loves them. And we managed to get in. So we not only got in, we got to meet with them and have some one-on-ones. And so at this party, these three people who are standing next to me, two of them, by the way, one's a current student, Shreya, I don't think I see her, and the other one is an alumni who already graduated. They were not talking. They weren't going up to people. They were hanging with each other. So how often do you go to a networking event and you hang out with your friends instead of talking to everybody else? All the time. So they were not doing it. So we did this little game where I was like, look guys, I'm gonna pick one person and you gotta go up to that individual and you gotta tell them who you are, introduce yourself, find out who they are, and have a conversation. Well, I didn't know he was the owner of Titmouse, so I picked him, and when I told the person, it was the young lady Olivia, I said, you gotta go, and she goes, that guy? I'm like, yeah. She's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, what's the problem? And she's like, he's the owner, and I'm like, best, that's the best. He was the nicest guy ever. And since she got back, she came back from this trip, not only did she meet him there, and he then hung out with our group, and he was so, so nice and so happy to have us there. He gave us his cards. He said, hey, we'll be happy to connect with you. When she got back to LA, she reached out. She also met his wife and had coffee with his wife, who then gave her some great advice and some tips. She doesn't really want to work at Titmouse. She works at DreamWorks, so she didn't really want to work there. But either way, she would not have had that. And maybe later on she does want to work at Titmouse. Now she has a connection, and she's continued to have that. So why it matters? More jobs. You have more opportunity, more freelance gigs. You know, build the future, like you're building your future connection, so it may not be right this minute. And I do want to emphasize, freelance is getting paid. I am always hearing how many people are getting freelance for free. It's not free. Make people pay you, especially if you're a graduate. That, you know, that often, oh, this is going to help your portfolio, and you have a portfolio from the best school, and this is the best school in this country, so you don't necessarily need it. So don't work for free. I'm just like to put that out there because it's one of my pet peeves, and people take advantage of you guys. Also, it increases your visibility. Sometimes folks will, maybe they don't necessarily think you're a good fit, but they know someone else. So I'll give you another example. This young man, Brian Horowitz, he was in New York City. He went to interview. We set up this plan to get him an interview at different companies. Met with this company, and they were like, oh, I love your work, but you're not a fit. We don't think you're a good fit at all. And he said, well, do you know anybody that you think might be a good fit? And he's like, you know, as a matter of fact, I do. So he reached out to his friend, who was the owner of another company, and referred him. And he got the job, and he moved to New York City, and he has a really super successful career. But he asked. So you guys gotta ask, and you gotta push those things. You also make friends. So often I have met people from networking that became my friends, and networking is something you do professionally and personally. It's not something that should be taboo. It's something that you want to start learning to embrace. How many people have gone to a party and met somebody new, and when they left, they're like, oh, I'm so glad I went? Show of hands. Right, because you meet different people. And I can tell you, as somebody who's just a little older, I find that some of my friends my age are not as energetic. And so I consistently am making new connections and trying to do things. I go to a dance class. I became friends with two of the people who now we go to another dance class. I'd go to the ceramic I'm teaching is because I knew someone else from that different organization, so I was able to get a foot in the door there. You know, so keep that in mind. Networking is not only professional, it's part of keeping you engaged in life. And as you get older, it gets harder. You're in school, so you have each other. Once you get out of school, you got to push yourself. And sometimes people will get a job, move to a new area, and they may or may not know anyone. What do you think you got to do? Network. So start trying to think of it as something that is enjoyable and beneficial in a variety of ways. It boosts your confidence. So often once you finish these different conversations and you walk away, you're like, oh wow, that was amazing. And you realize you can actually converse with somebody on the same level as them. So it makes you feel confident. Now, granted, there are times where somebody will say something and it does the opposite, and that's okay. You can never make everyone happy, so you gotta get past that. You know, think about this, when you meet someone, you may love them, and sometimes you meet someone and you just don't. Well, that's how the world is. So when you meet that person and you guys don't click, move on. Don't take it personal. Doesn't matter, you keep on moving. You also start hearing insight. So one of the employers we had met with, this guy, his name is Joel from Bento Box, he told us he loves to meet with students because he likes to stay in touch with what technology is prevalent. He's like, I like meeting with students from around the world because they might be using this in a way that I've never heard of it. And so they also are enjoying having these different kind of conversations. And then you may hear from them about the way they use something that you never even thought existed. You also get advice from experts. I find most people in the industry love giving feedback. They love sharing knowledge. They want you guys to succeed, especially they came from this world. They know how hard it is. They know how daunting it can be sometimes after you graduate, especially when there's challenges in the market. So you get sometimes somebody offers to mentor you. Has anyone ever had anyone offered to mentor them at all? Did you take them up? Okay, keep doing it. Ask. For those of you who haven't, you can ask somebody. You can literally say, hey, do you think, there's a young lady, Hannah, I think I referred her last night to Q. She works at EA, and she is always saying, I love mentoring, send your students my way. I'm so happy to help in any way possible, because when she first graduated, she struggled and she had a hard time, and she knows all of the challenges. So you get that advice and take advantage. And if somebody hasn't offered, you can ask people. What's the worst they can say? No, that's it. So you can also find that it opens the door not just for jobs, but other types of collaborations. So there's a lot of benefits to networking, and it does, in my career, it's made the difference of success or not being successful. So it's literally, and I'm gonna give you like a case study later on. So the barriers, how many here have imposter syndrome? Okay, we all do. It's not uncommon. So I feel comfortable doing this. I don't have imposter syndrome doing this now. When I first started in this industry and I got my first job and I was a director of career services, and all of a sudden I'm in this office, there's a dean and there's a president, and they started using some words. I was like, oh God, what does that mean? I don't even know I don't even know what this means. So here I am writing it down, looking these things up, and so I didn't feel like I fit. And I didn't feel like I was smart enough. So that was then, that's ended. But now, fast forward, now I'm doing ceramics. And I had a show recently. And when I went to the show, I was so nervous because I was like, oh my gosh, what if they hate it? I don't know if I can take this feedback. I don't know if I can handle having somebody reject me that way. So it's normal to feel that way. To have imposter syndrome is normal. The thing is, you can't let it dominate. You still have to overcome it. You still have to go back into, I want to feel a little uncomfortable. It's okay for me to feel this way. It will pass. You will not have it forever. You'll get more knowledgeable. When you start your internship, you start your jobs, at the beginning you're gonna feel that. Especially when some companies are really nice and some companies are not. Some companies are just like, yeah, figure it out, don't bother me. And others are gonna be more nurturing. That will pass, and it will not be that way forever. And then later on in life, you're gonna do something else, and it's gonna make you feel a little uncomfortable. Just accept it, that's part of life, and it's not uncommon. We also, a lot of times, avoid things where we don't want to be rejected. Fear of rejection is real. How many times have you saw somebody and you're like, oh gosh, should I go up and talk to this person or not? How many people have ever said that? And then how many of you guys actually went up and talked to them? And how many of them walked away? So, right, so the biggest regret is doing nothing. Because if you didn't go up and talk to this person and you didn't make this connection, then later on you're gonna say, why didn't I do that? I had this chance and I blew it. So fear of rejection, it can be dating, also similar to a job interview. I've had people who are like, oh, I really want to ask this person out, but I'm afraid they're not going to like me. And then later on, turns out the person liked them, and they were like, too bad you didn't ask me out before I got married, because I really had a crush on you. So it's every part of our life. It's not one thing, it's everything. Has anyone had that happen to them? Yes, so it happens all the time. So don't let fear of rejection stop you from doing anything. Social anxiety. How many people who get nervous just being in a big crowd like this? Not uncommon. It's normal. And after COVID, we were all inside. So then we stopped having this outside interaction, so it made it a little bit worse. It made anyone who had any social anxiety, it probably got a little bit more challenging. So not uncommon when you start to feel it. One of the things that we do, a lot of times I'll tell somebody, if you're in an event and you start feeling overwhelmed and you start feeling like my hands are sweating, I'm feeling uncomfortable, my stomach is gurgling, whatever it is that you're feeling, walk outside, take a deep breath, and remember that it's normal. It's not abnormal for you to feel that. Today when you're out there and you're interviewing with some of these employers, if you start getting nervous, it's okay. Take a deep breath and think, if you weren't getting nervous, then there's probably something wrong, because that's how most people feel when they're in these environments where there's, this could be the career I've always wanted, or whatever it is. It's so common. So don't let it stop you. And fear of being judged, I think the best way I can describe this is all of us judge. You guys are judging me right now. Some of you are going to be like, what is she wearing those shoes with that outfit? And some of you are saying, oh, I love that necklace. And some of you are like, I hate that necklace. So it doesn't matter. We all do it. It's part of how we operate. Most people will sum somebody up in 30 seconds. They're going to look you up and down, and they're going to make a decision. And that's okay. And you're going to do the same thing with them. So it doesn't matter. We all do it. How many people ever go to a conference or a networking event and are not sure what to say? Okay, so I always like to throw a few of them out there. So the easiest one I always like to say is, what brings you to this conference? And other people are like, well, isn't it obvious what brings them? No, maybe they're there recruiting. Maybe they're there to take a master class. Maybe they're there looking for a job. Either way, if you walk up to an individual and they're by themselves, they're looking for someone to talk to. They feel the same way you do. And when you ask somebody what brings you, it makes it like, oh, well, I'm here for this, and then what brings you as well. So there's certain little key things that you can say that are not that, they're not that big of a deal, and it's not something that you have to say something super brilliant. No, you just really want to start a dialogue. Oh, did you see this speaker? What did you think? You're leaving a place. Oh, what did you think about this guy and what he said? And have you ever done that before? So you can think about what's actually happening, and when you're trying to figure out what to ask them, if you can't come up with anything, what brings you to this conference, or what brings you to this networking event? The biggest thing you should do, though, is talk to people, because so often I managed teams, and we would go to a networking event, and I would go see them all hanging out and talking to each other. And I'm like, no, we're not here for that. So I would say, look, give yourself a goal. If I'm going to an event and there's 100 people, I want to meet at least 10 people before I leave. no matter what. For me, I have high goals. I want to meet everyone. I want to leave and everyone will be saying, hey, Deb, see you later. And I'm not exaggerating. For those of you who know me, know that's true. But you guys give yourself a goal. Don't just go and willy-nilly and talk to your friends. Go up to the speakers. Don't wait for that. You know, that's another thing. People are afraid to talk to speakers, or they wait until after their speech. I always figure out who's speaking. I look them up. I find out what they're looking for, what they look like, and I go up to them beforehand, before they've been bombarded by everybody else. So there's little tricks you can do to make life a little easier. Just remember, the fear of measuring up is so normal. We often do it. You know, you can always compare yourself to somebody else. It's just how we operate. And you may be really great at one thing, and you may be really great at another thing, and I might be terrible at that. And that's how it is. So nobody is great at everything. So know that. Sometimes, does anyone ever get physically overwhelmed, like you start feeling sick? Right. It's not uncommon. I can tell you, I haven't spoke in a big group lately, and so this morning when I got up, I'm like, oh, wait, they said there might be 600 people. Holy crap. Am I going to be able, I started getting a little nervous, but it's okay because I focused that I have a message that I want to share with you that will hopefully make things a little bit easier when you're out there and networking and understand. So I'm still here, no matter how I felt. So just know that. If I physically feel off, for me, it's nature. That's why I walk outside. If I'm in an environment and I'm starting to feel a little overwhelmed and I'm starting to feel either nauseous or my head starts hurting or whatever it is, if I walk outside, nature grounds me. And a lot of times I've heard it grounds a lot of people. So keep things like that. Figure out what it is that makes you feel better. Is it looking at TikTok? Is it going outside? Is it calling someone you know? Whatever it is, we all have something that makes us like forget about what we're stressing about. So remember that. And again, always feel, accept that it's okay to feel uncomfortable. It's part of it. Okay. Network no-nos. So how many times have you guys been talking to somebody and you're having a conversation and then you see them looking like this? Does that happen to anybody? They're trying to see who else is walking by. Right. And because they're not present. Or they look on their phone. Or their phone rings. Caught you again. She's like, please stop. The thing is, the biggest no-no is not being present. You know, when you are engaged with an individual, I think if you can make them feel like they're the only person in the world, you've won. Because that's what they want. They don't want you to start thinking about, you know, oh wait, who's that person over there? Oh wait, who's that person there? Or they're, so remember that when you're engaged, you want to be 100% present. You're not on your phone. You're not responding when your watch buzzes. You're not, you see someone that's super cool, like the owner of Titmouse, and you're like, oh my gosh, and you're awestruck. It doesn't matter. That right now you want to be 100% there. Eye contact, because that's the other thing. Culturally, there's people from all over the world here. And culturally, in some cultures, making eye contact is not necessarily a thing. In this country, it is. People want you to make eye contact, so do it. Look them in their eye, and you know, sometimes it feels uncomfortable, so like I used to have some of my super shy students practice. Again, no religion, no wars, no medicine, we keep that out, all of that stuff. The reason why we don't is people judge us based on those things. So if I say, oh, I really hate this person, whatever, I don't want to say, so I could come up with a bunch of them, but someone's going to judge me, and someone's going to think, well, I like that person, and why would you say that? So keep that stuff out. And, you know, I think the biggest thing is, how many of you, I've seen this happen a lot, where somebody meets someone, they're like, oh, wow, I'm going to send you my portfolio as soon as we leave, and then they don't do it. And when you don't do it, that means you're basically not doing what you say. So what happens is nobody intentionally does that, though. You're not saying, oh, I didn't feel like doing it, so I didn't. No, you probably are too busy. You are overwhelmed. You forgot. You didn't make it a priority. or you feel like you're not comfortable sending it to this person because they may not like it, and you don't want to get their reaction or their lack of reaction. So do what you say is really important, and it's one of the most basic things. If you say I'll be there at 10, then you be there at 10. If you've never been there, you show up early because you don't want to be lost and not be able to find the place. If you say I'm sending you my work, then you send my work. If you say, oh, I know somebody from so-and-so, I'm going to have them reach out and send you a reference, then you do it. It's so big and so basic, but do what you say. And if you're one of those people who are not sure, write it down. Keep a little notebook, even something small. I keep my notes on my phone now, mainly because I can't read my own writing half the time, but and that way I make sure I have an actual app that has my to-do list. So it checks it off when it's done, and I also feel a sense of accomplishment because I see it's done. And then if I go on there and I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot to do this, then it's a reminder. So whatever it takes for you guys, do what you say. It's huge. So the outcome of networking, this is a trip that I'm just going to give you this story and then we're getting tied up pretty quick. So we started literally, this will be my third year. I had this person who I used to work with at another school, and she says, hey, do you want to do this trip to Annecy? Yeah, sure, let's do it. We're going to curate ourselves, which meant we didn't have any students, we didn't have any employers, we didn't have any infrastructure because it was just us, and we didn't have the school behind us doing a lot of the legwork that they had done in the past. So what did that mean? Networking, outreach. So we immediately started marketing. We did outreach first to universities and places like Ringling and said, hey, we have this program. We want to share it with your students. We'd love for them to join us. And we did a lot of outreach there. And then once we got the students, then we had to reach out to the employers. And we couldn't schedule the employer meetings until we had for sure knew we were going to have enough students. And so the first year, we met with some really amazing employers. And I'm telling you, if I reached out to 200, I could get maybe 5 meetings. And it's a lot because you're trying to talk these employers into meeting with 20 people at a conference that they are there doing their own business. Second year, the employers were 10 times better. And the students signed up quicker. We didn't have to work as hard because now people knew who we were. And we went from having, not that we had bad employers, but the second year we had every main employer that people wanted to meet with. And so it changed the game. But the networking we did, this list, we met with all of these employers. And it was all from networking. It had nothing to do with anything but networking. And I can tell you there was a young lady who was on our trip this last year. Some people she drove crazy, including me, and I loved her, but sometimes she was just in your face, 100%. And it paid off because before the conference, she reached out to all of the people we were meeting with. One of those people worked at Illumination. And when we were there, we thought HR was going to be the people who were presenting. And instead, their creative director was there. And so he presented. So she went up to him right away after his talk and said, hey, can I pitch my idea? I want someone to make it go live. And he's like, yeah. He made time. She pitched the idea. After that, she made some changes, went back home, later on reached back out and said, hey, I implemented the changes you suggested. I agree. They were right on the money. Thank you for your help. I want to show it to you. She shows it to him. He's like, that's amazing. His company wasn't going to produce it, but he knew another company that would. So he referred her to another company, introduced her to this other company, and they produced her story. And that was only networking. And so it pays off. I mean, the outcomes are unbelievable. Here's just some of the pictures from all the different employers that we met with, and it was just really a wonderful experience. Each one of these are with one of the different employers that we met with. And I see some of the alumni here on there, so they came too. Also, don't forget these resources. You guys have a lot. Your career services department is well connected. Your faculty, well connected. All of these different things. Volunteering is huge because when you're volunteering, especially at an organization you want to work for, now you've made connections, so when they hear about different opportunities and they see how great you are, they're going to pull you in. Take advantage of these resources. You guys have them available, and so often you don't use them. Takeaways, research, prepare your material, connect in advance. Treat everyone you meet as a future client or employer. That's a biggie. If you meet someone, assume that that could be your future boss. That might be a future client. Treat everyone with respect, even when you think that it's somebody. Some people treat high-level people better than low-level people. I'm a believer that you treat everybody the same, and it's respectful, kind, and professional. So keep that in mind. Blend the personal and digital, and number one, follow up. Because you can make a million contacts, but if you don't follow up, they're not going anywhere. Thank you guys. Appreciate your help. Perfect.
What would be the story of what you would say your most successful but unlikely networking?
Oh, okay, I have a couple. Okay, so I can give you two. So I had a young man, John Manos. He graduated production in right around the time COVID was starting, and he had gotten a job offer from Disney, which then was rescinded when COVID happened, so he never got to start. He was really upset, and that was his lifelong dream. He had done all these different trips there. So I said, listen, there's nothing we can do. Themed entertainment is gone right now, and it's going to come back, but you got to move on. Let's get you something else. In the interim, home improvements was growing because everybody was fixing up their house. So Crate and Barrel in Chicago says, Deb, we need somebody who's good at production. And I'm like, John, would you be interested in doing this job? And he's like, yeah, I would. So we introduced him to them. He ended up getting hired. He worked at Crate and Barrel for, I don't know, a year or so. Then things started opening up again, and IAPA was happening. This is a big conference that happens in Orlando. It's all themed entertainment. And I said, John, why don't you come down, meet me at the conference, and we'll go walk the floor, and I'll introduce you to some folks, and we'll go to a few events. So he did. So he came down, forced him to talk to people. He was super shy. He was like, no, I don't want to. I'm like, you came all the way down here. You get your butt over there. So he did. He ended up meeting quite a few people, including somebody who had come to one of the networking parties from Disney. And I told them he really wants to work there. When you have something open up, blah, blah, blah. They connected. Afterwards, I said, send your information, keep following up. And about 6 months later, they contacted him and said, we have a spot. Would you be interested? He got the job. He's been working there ever since, and he's moved up. So I felt like that was a good one because he was patient. Even though he had to pivot, he pivoted back, and he didn't give up. I have a lot of those kind of stories, so I think that was one of my favorite ones. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Deborah. So I just wanted to say, because I didn't see a lot of people coming up to ask questions, and so I was like, okay, I might as well come up and say hi. I went on the Anniston trip this past summer, and Deborah is not only the best coach, but she's one of the nicest people ever. I remember there was one event, Women's in Animation, where, she knows what I'm talking about, where there was this woman, she was giving career advice, and she was like, oh, I encourage students to take jobs where they don't get paid. And Deborah essentially stood up and, asked a question and advocated for the students, saying like, it's important to not only put yourself out there, but know your worth, and encourage yourself to advocate for yourself and know that you should get paid. So I recommend talking to Deborah if you have a chance. So.
Thank you. That comment when I spoke up, by the way, throughout the rest of the conference, people come up to me, I love what you said. I love what you said, because literally I was just saying, I totally disagree. I don't advocate for working for free. And she was one of the panelists on the stage. So I was kind of going against, but I don't care, it was wrong, and I don't agree. So do advocate. You guys should get paid. Don't work for free. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm a freshman in animation currently. I'm not really looking for a job or an internship right now. So I was just curious, what steps do you think like someone who's kind of in the same shoes should take at an event like this? Like what kind of questions should I ask? Is it worth like reaching out to companies now, even if it's like years in advance, just to make those connections? Like how should I go about that?
100% reach out to companies now. So the more, think of it this way. If you graduated and you did 3 internships, and an employer is interviewing you and interviewing somebody else who did no internships, who's going to have the advantage? You are. Not to mention those 3 internships are going to make connections. So first of all, I think that it's important to try to get yourself out there and to complete as many internships as you can, because it not only makes you get connections, it makes you feel more confident. Is what you can say is when you're talking to these employers, instead of focusing on what you don't have, focus on what you do have. And you were saying, listen, I'm looking for an internship. I'm an earlier quarter student, not brand new, because you are earlier quarter. And I really love your company because of this, this, and this, and I think I could contribute to it. And you can show them specifically what you can do. And maybe your first year internship is not as hands-on because you don't have the knowledge yet. So maybe your first internship is working at a company in a more of a supportive position. Then the next year, it's going to be more a hands-on type of position. And then your final year is going to, I think 3 internships is great. So I feel like you are never too early, but you basically want to kind of position what you have to offer and go for it now. Don't wait. I can tell you, I talked to 2 people last night who did not do internships before they graduated. Not that they didn't try, they did try, but they wish they had gotten into some of these places because they know how important it is. So yeah, it's never too soon.
Hi, my name is Madeline. I'm a senior in illustration. I understand that you have a very vast experience working in the university and now with your own company. So I wanted to ask, what are some ways that, as a soon-to-be recent graduate, you're able to distinguish yourself with these employers? And what are some specific traits that they may be looking for?
So are you wanting to work as a full-time illustrator at a company, or are you trying to start your own business?
Probably for a company. I like the idea of being able to have like a consistent paycheck, 401k, those types of benefits.
You know, details, yeah. Survival type things that we need in life, yeah, that makes sense. My thoughts are, one is, first of all, reach out to the people that you want to work with. So if you have these 5 companies that you think you not only want to work for, but sometimes people will reach out to a company and their work is the opposite. But so a lot of times people are going to hire people that match what they're doing. So if you're saying, you know, hey, I really want to work for Cartoon Network and I want to be an illustrator at Cartoon Network, we'll just use them. Then you're going to, when you reach out to these folks, you're not just going, one, I would follow them. And now when you follow them, you're going to start on LinkedIn. You're going to start seeing what they're posting, what is happening there. Are they posting anything? And then you're going to start trying to find the people. So like there's a guy there named Conrad Montgomery. He was like their creative director for years, and it was like the biggest illustrator out there. So I would reach out to someone like Conrad and say, hey, I noticed that you worked at Cartoon Networks. I noticed that you are the illustrator of all illustrators, because he posts his work and he shares. And I'd love to spend 5 minutes to just pick your brain and learn a little bit more about how to get a foot in the door. So I am a proponent of talking to those people directly, but also share your work. Don't just, sometimes you get your portfolio and you work so hard and you build a website and it takes forever, but then you're not sharing it with anyone. So, and you don't have to say, oh, here's my new portfolio. You can, but you can also show clips. You can show, oh wait, I just finished this new project. And I've seen people get picked up because they shared an illustration of their work and somebody saw and said, oh, that's perfect. We need someone just like you. So share your work, but when you share it, you've got to make sure that you're following the same some of the people who might actually be looking at it, and you're trying to connect with them as well. Because if you're not connecting with them, how are they going to know about it? That's the thing, is getting in front of the right people. So I am a big person for sharing everything. Not everything, everything that is relevant to them, and direct outreach. And it's scary because people are saying, well, nobody responded. That's okay. They may not be on it, and they may not be looking at social media. Reach out to somebody else and continue. And you also have a whole database of alumni that might be there, and they usually respond no matter what. So I would also look at those companies and see, hey, do I know any alumni who work there? Oh, hey, I'm about to graduate. I noticed that you're from Ringling. As another alumni, I'd love to spend 5 minutes, always 5 minutes, because nobody ever has time, and make it short and sweet. And And some companies, right now the market's wonky, but it changes. So sometimes there's companies when they start getting so busy and they're hiring, they will pay their employees a bonus if they refer people. So keep that in mind, because people don't want to bug. You're always like, I don't want to bug anybody. I don't want to bug anyone. No, that's why you make it short, sweet, and relevant. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank
Okay,
you.
sure, thanks.
Hi, my name is McKenna. I'm a freshman in illustration. I actually have a portfolio review with you later today.
Oh, perfect. Great.
I'm very much prioritizing internships over the summer. I'm from California, so I have a lot of opportunities that are there. And I have a lot of portfolio reviews through the Career Center here, and they told me that my work is able to compete with the juniors and seniors that also may be applying.
Right.
So that being said, what are ways that I can elevate my resume to compete with this one?
So a couple of things. One is if you've participated in any contest and you've won, that can be on your resume. Another thing is if you don't have any experience at all in your field, what people will do is, or when you write your resume, you can write employment or you can write experience. If you write employment, then you better have worked at these places. But when you write experience, it just says that you've had experience doing this. So I know a lot of folks, when they don't have that employment history yet, they'll build on their experience. So they will say specifically, I am an illustrator who, and I focus on, color illustration or whatever it is, or whatever you do, but I would list out what it is that you do under your experience. But I also would do things like, for instance, if you wanted to get an internship at Disney, okay, I was telling some folks that one of my past employees worked there. Her name is Megan Clark. Sweet as pie. She's on LinkedIn. She's always responding to everybody. Well, if you followed Megan on LinkedIn and then you looked her up on Instagram and started following her, you would also see that Megan not only is into working at Disney as a recruiter, but in personal life, she's a ceramic artist. So you want to also look and see, wait, do we have anything in common? And start kind of looking at different ways to connect with the people who are hiring. You may not actually connect with her on LinkedIn, but now you have this knowledge. And if you also, so this guy we see every year, Joel from Bento Box, for instance, and he hires a lot of illustrators. He looks for his illustrators on Instagram. That's what he looks for them. And he said he scrolls them. I said, but how do you connect with them? He goes, well, they've already connected with me. So in illustration, I think Instagram is huge, huge, huge. But it is really doing the outreach and trying to figure out who your audience is. So like Joel, the other thing is, it's not always about a job and it's not always about us. Like LA just had some big fires. So all of my employers I know and all of my friends I know, I reached out. Nothing major. It was just like, hey guys, just checking in. You guys okay? And he was like, no, I'm half a mile from the fires. I'm about to be evacuated. I'm losing my mind. Half of my friends, but by doing that, he then sent me a message the other day. He's like, it really was kind of you to reach out. I really appreciate that. Half the people didn't respond because they're moving and they're dealing with it. But think of all the different ways where you can be impactful and you can be engaging and you can also continue to nurture those relationships. So hope that helps.
Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Okay. Hey, my name is Jia Yuan, and I come from a game art major, which is a junior. First of all, I really appreciate Career Surveys give us this chance to actually get to know how to get into the industrial. And based on, also, I forgot to mention, I'm also an international student. So for my scenario, for our majors, we really focusing on our focal points during the 4 years. So when we especially for these recent years in the game industry was kind of like everyone knows it's a hard condition. Even our professors mentioned about this. So
Yeah.
So a lot of people trying to get into some other fields that is keep away from the things that are already being fulfilled. However, not everyone actually does fit in that field. That probably have some seats available. So based on that, everyone getting advices from the previous graduations, from the professors, from the people probably used to be in the industrial, there's a lot of information comes here and actually deciding our directions because we have a really, really strict schedule and and we don't have too much time on it. So we have to make choices as soon as possible, but that probably is not most feasible. So based on that scenario, do you have any suggestions to like seniors or seniors, juniors, like in this kind of specific time?
Well, a couple things. One is, even if you have to make a decision on the direction you're wanting to go, that changes. So maybe changes not because you're making decisions because you have teachers are saying, hey, I'm noticing you're really great at this, so you should focus on this. Stop doing that. Don't waste your time. And in your mind, you're like, no, but I want to do that. And two things. You want to always listen to your teacher because they probably have a lot of insight and they know, and based on history, they can see where you're already aligning. But if you still feel passionate about the other things, you can continue to do some of those other things. And you can continue to work on some of those other things. And maybe your next teacher might say, wait, you've come a long way. Maybe you've made improvements. Okay, and sometimes teachers will say, oh, I think maybe you could do both. That's one scenario. The other scenario is you might graduate and you may get a job at a company, and once you get the job, you're like, oh, I don't really like this. I think I'm gonna move into a different area. Not uncommon. So it's everything, even though it seems like, oh my gosh, they're making us do this stuff so fast and make all these decisions and I'm not quite ready, that's not uncommon, but it's not permanent. Everything changes, and you know, in the market being bad right now, your early quarter, by the time you're graduating, it'll probably be better by then. So my advice is, because you have a professor saying do this and you want to do this, is continue to try to do internships and volunteering, because maybe if you got an internship doing what the professor said, you may love it or hate it. And maybe you may get an internship doing what you really want and realize, oh, I don't like this at all. So I think the more you engage, the more you get yourself out there, and also don't accept everything as permanent, and keep working on the stuff that you're passionate about and that you love on the side, because it just makes you that much more well-rounded.